And we are live. Hello my friends, welcome to Pro-Am Strings. I'm Henriette, I'm the owner of Pro-Am Strings, and I'm doing these live classes for you, the players, at my YouTube channel, so that you can get a little bit more specific input into the questions that you are asking me. So I'm really happy to be here today, and I'm hoping you are too. And I always really enjoy doing these classes. So how it works is you probably have a chat box somewhere in your screen. You can add your question to the chat and then hit send, and I get to see it at my end, and this way we can communicate, and you can ask any questions and I'll do my best to answer them to the best of my ability. So if you're here, come and say hi in the chat box, and then I know that there's actually somebody there and I'm not just talking to my computer, and I'm looking, yes, the people are coming in. We'll just give it a couple of minutes before we get started, because people are coming in and finding their feet, and maybe some are having to restart their computer, and that's absolutely fine. So welcome everyone. So you might write in the chat box where you're from, where in the world you're located, how long you've been playing the violin, and anything else that you like. Here in England it's absolutely freezing cold, so maybe where you are it's a lot warmer, that sort of thing, so that we can just get to know how the chat box works, and that will be easier for everyone if we know how it works. So don't forget to hit send if you've typed your question. If you look through the chat box, you can add a reaction as well, and you can find emojis and all sorts if you like. Then if I can get my emoji page away, you can also indicate your support by buying a super sticker or super chat, or and that is the icon with the $sign. And what else is that? Oh yeah, we can do a poll, which I occasionally do but not very often, so we'll see if we need that, if that turns out to be a fun thing to do. So come and say hi when you're there and you're using the chat box. Whilst we're waiting for people to join, oh hi, there is Erin Elizabeth. Hello from Colorado, USA. Happy to be here. I have a feeling, Erin, that it's very early in the morning where you are. So well done for getting up so early to join this class. Really exciting for me to see that you're there. And usually during these sessions, we get lots of viewers from all over the world. And I really like that, because we all have got a different way of playing, a different way of being in life. And it's really nice to get together here. And this is a very supportive community, so you can always come in here to the live classes to get some like-minded people, and to sorry, I'm slightly distracted because Erin says you are right, haha. So what time is it where you are? Here it is 1:30. So we've just had lunch here. And I suspect that it might well be before breakfast where you are. So like I said, a supportive community. We're here to help each other play the violin better. We've all got the same goal in mind. So you're in the right place if you're just learning the violin, or if you are maybe a little bit further advanced and wanting to know a few more specific things about your own playing. So there is the community tab, of course, when you go to the homepage of the YouTube channel, and you can always, if there is something that bothers you, you can write in that community tab, and people will respond. So please feel free to use that. Annika is here as well. Welcome. Nice to see you again. I'm here for 3 o'clock, and I ask you about what kind of chin rest you recommend. From Serbia, welcome. 3 o'clock. Yeah, you're a bit ahead of time from where we are. And Erin, is 6:30, still dark out. Well, if I look outside right now, it's very dark here, but that's because the weather is absolutely atrocious with pouring rain and freezing cold. So really good of you to get up that early. Now Erica is asking, hello Nature Sketches, hello from Pennsylvania. Nice to see you. Really good. So Enika wanted to ask about what kind of chin rest I would recommend. Now, here we go. We'll go straight in. What kind of chin rest I recommend is a difficult one. I'll show you what I've got. I have got this chin rest. It's made from rosewood and I think it looks really nice with my violin. Tell me what you think. So that is one thing, the visual. For me, the visual aspect is not the most important thing because the most important thing is the space that is taken up by your shoulder rest to the top of the chin rest. And this is, in my case, this is about this big and it fits precisely between my jaw and my collarbone. At the moment, slightly less so because I'm wearing this hoodie, which is completely inappropriate for playing the violin because the hood is always in the way. So that doesn't help me because then it makes my shoulder rest a little bit and my chin rest a little bit too high. But coming back to your question, is the total height of the chin rest and the shoulder rest should fill up the gap between your collarbone and your jaw. So people who have got longer necks like myself have got a very different combination of chin rest and shoulder rest than people who have got a very short neck. And I don't know about your individual shape and situation, obviously, but you always want to aim that the chin rest and the shoulder rest together fill up that space. Now, there are many different shapes of chin rest. Mine goes over the tailpiece. Can you see that? But there are other violins that have the chin rest that just sits by the side. And that depends on how high you want to have your violin on your shoulder. So if you naturally play more like this, then you might want your chin rest to go even further over. If you naturally play even higher, then you might want to have your chin rest on the side. And as you progress, if you're a complete beginner, I would just start with a sort of medium level chin rest, which is not too high and which probably sits on this side only and not go over the chin rest and not go over the tailpiece here. But then as you progress, you might experiment with different styles and see what fits you better. Now, just this week, I was teaching a pupil and she said, oh, the ridge of my chin rest here is really, really sharp. It's really digging into my neck. That happens sometimes, and therefore I have got one that has a slightly rounder ridge. You can see this is really, really gently shaped. So I find it a lot more comfortable. Other people would say, okay, yeah, I go around that issue by putting a cloth on there. And you see lots of people playing with cloth or with chamois leathers. The chamois leather, of course, has the added advantage that it's non-slip. So it might be easier, but you could do it like that. And the way you fix it is just fold it around it. Can you see? I was just doing that earlier, and then it will just hang there, you see. That does affect the sound a little bit because you're just covering this area of the violin, so it can't vibrate as well as when you play without it. But some people say, okay, I'll take that for granted, that's fine, because it's so much more comfortable. So if you know the brand of your chin rest or shoulder rest that you're playing with, write it down in the comment section because it will be interesting for us to find out what you guys all play on. For shoulder rest, I play on a Wolf Forte Secondo, and it's funny because I think last winter I have a friend who's a violin maker and he sells the whole range of every shoulder rest that's available. So I said to him, can you send me your most expensive 5 shoulder rests because I want to try something different? And I had amazing ones. I tried them all, but in the end I did come back to this one. This was my the same style as I've always had, and the reason why I like it so much is that you can bend it to your shape. So if you have a good look at it, let's see if I can show you. Maybe this way is better. There is a slight dent right here, and that allows for my collarbone, which is fairly pronounced, to sit on my collarbone. So I bent this thing. I won't do it now, but you can bend this and make it fit your shoulder, your collarbone. And then you can raise the legs or lower the legs, and I would suggest that you start with fairly low legs on these things, and then it will also swivel. Can you see? So I can also change the angle, and this is what I like about this shoulder rest, because it sits so nicely on my shoulder, because first of all it fits the shape of my shoulder. You can perhaps see it just makes contact everywhere. There isn't a gap. I couldn't put my hand underneath, and that is the case because I have bent it to fit my shoulder, but also because it swivels. Can you see? And that way, oops, now it just comes off, and that way it just makes a really good contact. So let me have a look. I hope that answers your question. Let me have a look at the chat box. Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot. I now do not have a chin rest. I'll have to buy a new one. Make a deal with your violin shop wherever you go that you try one, or try them in the shop, even better. Put it on, have a play, and then change it or try various different things, because you might, if you buy a random one, it may well not be to your liking at all. So I'd suggest you go to your shop and see if you can try one or two out. And let me give you a word of warning. So I'm just going to get something from my violin case. Where is it? I have this little magic tool. I'll just take this off. And that is this thing. It has a name, but I don't know what the name is. It's like a chin rest screwdriver or something like that. It's got a little pin. Can you see at the top? And with that, you can put it in the little holes here and loosen it and tighten it. You can use a paper clip as well to do it, but you risk sticking it through too far and then scratching the ribs of your violin right there. But when you tighten this, make sure you don't tighten it too tight, because you can actually make this too tight. It's got a screw thread in there, and if you tighten it too much, you actually compress the rib of the violin here, and it damages the instrument. So be very, very careful. And this little thingy, whatever it may be called, is very useful. If you want one, you can get them off my website in the accessories section of the shop. Okay, so there you go. Let me have a look at the chat box. The shoulder rest is a forte secondo, same one. Good morning, Terry. Nice to see you. You're at 7:30, and you use a Rosewood chin rest as well, and you may be able to answer that question. I like the Rosewood, and I think it's just a really nice colour. People say it is also a more pleasant material than any sort of composite material like plastics and what have you, what these things are made of. So that is a personal preference. I wouldn't mind if my chin rest was black, but I just really like it because my violin maker who's sorted all of this for me, I've got rosewood here, I've got rosewood here, and I've got rosewood pegs as well. So it makes it one whole. You see, it all goes together really nicely. So if that is what you find important, then by all means buy it all in the same style, and that will look really good. Okay, what are some good books on playing the violin? There's just something there in front. Books, I think you're right. What are some good books on playing the violin? It's a good question. I haven't read them all. Of course, it depends on what you want to read about. There is a very good book, and I'd have to look up what it's called, about the history of violin making. That's super interesting. I don't have it, but I've been told it's really, really good. Then there are books about famous players. Then there are books about teaching, and I would definitely recommend, even when you're learning, although it's a little bit technical, go for Galamian, The Art of Violin Playing is really, really good. Then I also really like the books by Absm, and that is about the mechanics of violin playing. It does not the title of the book. I can't remember exactly what the title is, but Absm, I'll write that in the text box. It's got really funny pictures, and it's all about the mechanics, about bowing and how you bow straight, and is very, very good, very commendable. And then if you want to read more about the technical aspect of violin playing, you can go for the books by Simon Fisher. They're very, very popular, and although people sometimes comment that they find it too technical and beginners especially don't understand all the things that are written in there, but it covers all of the violin technique. So there's this book that is called Basics, and there's this book called Scales, and there's other book, I'm not quite sure, Bowing Technique or something. It's 3 books in a series, the books by Simon Fisher. So it very much depends on what you want to read on, technique or violin makers or famous players. So take your pick. There's lots on the market, and many more books that I don't know about, no doubt. I hope that answers your question. Is there anyone else who wants to ask a question? Okay, let me address, whilst we're waiting for some more questions to come through, let me address a question then that has been asked by one of our viewers who has written this below one of the videos. And that question is about violin mutes. There are many violin mutes on the market. You may know I tend to have this one on my violin permanently fixed. I can take it off. But can you see it? It's one of those. Okay, and you slide it and it mutes the violin. And the way it mute the violin is they stop the bridge from vibrating. So they don't stop the violin the vibrations going into the bridge completely. And the various different mutes have got different intensities, shall we say, of muting the bridge. So this is a fairly light one. Then on the other hand, I have got a hotel mute, which is this one, which you can play with in hotel rooms. So this is very strong mute. Let me just play something and then you can hear what the difference is. Let me just put my shoulder rest back on, and it feels a lot more comfortable. Hang on a sec. There we are. So this is with my normal sliding mute. This is a Whitney mute. Now I'll take it off, and then you can hear the real sound. And now I'll put my hotel mute on. Can you hear the difference? Now this week I was teaching a boy who's a very, very advanced player, and he needs to play with a mute in his Tchaikovsky violin concerto in the canzonetta, and he'd forgotten his mute. So I just wanted him to find out about playing with mutes, and we just put a clothes peg on. Let me see if I'm not damaging the bridge now. Listen to this. See how it works exactly the same? Now, once I was playing a violin sonata by the composer Mio, and I was experimenting because this was for an exam at Conservatoire, and I wanted to get a specific timbre of sound, and I was experimenting with different mutes. This one is a bit too wide. See, it doesn't fit in between the strings. Maybe if I mute some of the higher range. You see, then you get a different sort of sound. But if you put mutes like pegs, closed pegs, in between the different strings, you can have a nice afternoon experimenting with the different sound qualities that you get. So there you go. Something for you to try. Muting the violin with closed pegs. Let me have a look at the chat box now. I learned about the 3, 4, 7, 8 to find the key made it easier. I am not sure what you mean by that. I learned about the 3, 4, 7, 8 to find the key, made it easier. I don't know about this at all, so maybe you can expand a little bit about that, Terry. Enika says there is a book about left-handed violin playing. Great. Enika is a person who's shifted from right-handed violin playing to left-handed violin playing. That book is no doubt really, really interesting for you to read. For people who play right-handed, there will be hardly a market for it, I would say. So lovely for you. Few people will actually want to read that, I think, who are in this group. But I'd be interested to find out if there's anything that is completely different, which I don't think there is. It's just, it will feel as if you're playing from scratch again, isn't it? But I didn't know there was a book about that. Is there anyone else who would like to ask another question? As I said to you before, my jumper, I showed you this, I think, last, oh no, it was my blue one, wasn't it? But this one, I have now got a shop on my YouTube channel, and this jumper I just want to wear every day, all day, because it's super warm, it's super comfortable. So I could definitely recommend, if it's cold where you are, to have a jumper like this. It's much better quality jumper than I was imagining it would be. So I was just trying this out when I first bought it. And you can change the logo. So there's all kinds of logos, and you can decide the color of your jumper and what type of logo. So you may have noticed that I have sometimes had this t-shirt on with like a more icon style violin player. I love that one as well. It's different. And then there is a very sweet one with a lady hugging her violin. But there's many more different logos as well. And whilst we're at it, I'll take a sip of my tea. Can you see this is lovely mug as well there. If you're interested, below any video on my channel, you can find the products there. So let me have a look at the chat box again. It would be great because I showed that I can learn playing violin with Pro String. yeah, that's right. Oh, hello JCS. Nice to see you here. What rosin would you recommend, please? Now, over the years, I have used any type of rosin that's available. Oh no, not quite, because recently I was adding things to my shop and I noticed that in America you guys have got a sparkly purple rosin, and I would love to try that, but I can't get it here, so I haven't got it. This is my go-to rosin, and it's Perastro Gold. Can you see? Let me see if I can show that to your camera. Perastro Gold. This is pretty much the most expensive rosin that you can get, and I'll tell you why I like it so much. So they come in all different qualities in all different price categories, from the very cheap one to the very expensive. They are equally good, but when you get a more expensive rosin, it just becomes easier because the rosin is slightly softer and it comes off more easily. So I rosin like this and it immediately comes off, whereas if I had a cheap one, I'll show you my cheap ones in a moment. you'd have to rosin about 3 times as long before any rosin comes off. And then rosin comes in different colours. This is more of a sort of golden rosin, but there's also darker rosins. Let me just get some other rosins for you. Oh, I thought I had another even more simple one. So what have we got here? This is high design rosin, a good sort of intermediate rosin. Oh, I know now why I've got this here, because nobody can open this tin. And that is perhaps, no, I can't open this. That's perhaps the disadvantage of buying a rosin in a tin. Look, can you see this tin's been dented because somebody's dropped it on the floor, and now we can't open it. So a slight slight hazard. This is the AB rosin. That's good rosin too, but it's a little bit harder than my Perastro, and they say that the harder rosins, they are better in warmer climates. Don't ask me why, but generally in colder climates you'd go for a whiter rosin, and in warmer climates you'd go for a harder rosin, which is this black one. All of the black ones actually tend to be slightly harder. And what else have I got here? This is also a white one, and it's come off its little sheet. What is this? This is high design, so this is exactly the same as this one. Okay, there is one in here, so it's not this one, you see. But that's a really good all-rounder as well. And unfortunately, some people are allergic to the rosin dust. And of course, when you rosin your bow and you play with it, it dusts right in front of your face. So if that is you and you start sneezing or feel like you've got hay fever type thing, then you might benefit from hyperallergenic rosin, and it doesn't quite dust as much as the other normal rosin. So people who've got allergies find that a lot easier than any of the other rosins. Tell me if that answers your question, or if you've got any more specific questions about rosin. I'm just going to look, what rosin would you recommend, please? So I'd recommend, as with all things violin, buy as expensive as you can possibly afford, and that's different for everyone, obviously. The cheap rosins, they work really well, so don't get me wrong, you just have to work at it a little bit harder, but the more higher quality you go, the easier it is to apply it on the violin, and the more steady it stays on the string, so you don't have to quite rosin as much, so it will last you a lot longer as well, the more expensive rosins, than the cheaper ones. But go for an intermediate quality one if you are trying to decide which is the rosin for you. Okay, bye Erica. The third and fourth notes together, and the seventh and eighth notes together. Okay, to work out the key of the piece, the third and fourth notes together. So let's imagine you're in the key of C major, E and F, and the seventh and eighth notes together. Okay, and B and C. Yeah, I find that if that works for you, that's absolutely fine. Take a look though at every last note of your piece of music. And the last note of your piece of music, unless you play with other people and you have very complicated chords, but the last note of your music, 9 times out of 10, will always indicate what key you're in. So say my piece is written in the key of, or it finishes on a G, and my piece is finishing on a G, then that piece might be either in the key of G major or the key of G minor. And it depends on the key signature, whether it is the major or the minor key, you see. So a G major scale would have 1 sharp, and G minor scale would have 2 flats. So you can work out like that as well. And JCS says, when my son played the stepping stones and wagon wheels, your video helps us very much, thank you. Oh, that's my great pleasure. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about the history of how this all came about. I was experimenting with video lessons from 2012 onwards. In 2012, I met a good friend of mine, and he was a photographer wanting to do some more videoing, and I was just curious to know what video lessons would have in addition to face-to-face lessons. And then we went into the studio for one day, which eventually turned, I think, into 4 days, because we had a lot of fun and we were all both experimenting. He was experimenting with new equipment and I was experimenting with different points of view. So he was filming me from above, so filming from straight above, and it was an eye-opener that you could see what happened to the strings when you would film it from straight above. And he was just experimenting with slidey things like you see in cinemas sometimes, don't you? And so we were already busy with that, and I'd recorded some DVDs with video lessons and so on. And then I thought I'd put them on YouTube, and who knows what happens, but nothing serious happened. We were just having fun, just experimenting with that. And then of course came COVID, and I thought, oh, now I need to really make use of my skill of videography. And then I started recording all the books that I would normally use with my own pupils, because the lessons had stopped and everyone was having online lessons. Lucky for me that it all worked and all my pupils had good computers so that they could have good online lessons. And obviously I'd been doing these live classes in a slightly different format, so I was used to teaching online as well. And so I recorded all of my lessons on videos, and so that every one of my pupils would have the ability to play with me on video during the week. So it just made life a lot easier, and not a single one of my pupils had to give up their playing through COVID. So this is how it all started, and I recorded lots and lots of the books I used then, and nowadays I record lots and lots of books of people, lots and lots of books of things that people request, or that I hear about, or that I just really like the Crickbone method. I think I've said this before. That is the method that I learnt with a long time ago. So I was really interested in recording videos of that. You mentioned the ABRSM syllabus, and I think that will be highly unlikely that I do that. First of all, I'm not a great fan of exams full stop. And secondly, I do them sometimes, but secondly, I think the ABRSM syllabus, I haven't looked at the new one to be fair, but the old ones always would teach things, or would expect knowledge of things that are not really in my line of pedagogy and what I believe in, how one should learn to play the violin. That's a very personal opinion, but I'd like to have the freedom to teach whatever I think is the most suitable for this individual person, and that is not always aligned with how the ABRSM syllabuses are organised. So sorry, very personal opinion, but unlikely, also because they change after a couple of years, so then the work is basically obsolete after that. And what I tend to use is old syllabuses, because there are pieces in there that are really suitable to what some of my pupils learn at some point. So I use the pieces sometimes, but I have a bit of an issue pedagogically to teach a whole ABRSM syllabus. Having said that, at the moment I have got pupils preparing. I have a person preparing for grade 8, and I've got a person preparing for grade 2. Then someone is coming up to grade 6, so they're learning the ABRSM scales. Now those are very, very useful, and it's really nice. There are a couple of omissions and a couple of extra things, like E natural minor in grade 1 is complete nonsense in my personal view. But apart from that, I tend to teach things at a different time sometimes. To be fair, my son's teacher said the same thing. Yeah, be very, very careful, because they are very difficult exams. And I know that from experience, because my own 3 children all did their grade exams, and I have observed from a mother's perspective how challenging it is for the children and how draining on a family it can be when one person in the family, I should say, takes a grade exam. So please don't take my comments as offense, because this is very much my personal view, and there are lots of other people's views that are equally valid, but this is my personal experience, both as a teacher and as a mother. I myself have never taken any grade exams, and people are always very, very amazed to hear that, because I grew up in a place where there wasn't such a thing. I grew up in the Netherlands and learned to play the violin in the Netherlands, and I'd never heard of it until I came to the UK, and suddenly I had to catch up with 8 syllabuses and get to know their programs and their philosophy behind it. So there is a very good way to learn to play the violin without the ABRSM. Enough of that. Anybody else? And I know I'm going to get a lot of flack after this, but I'll take it on the chin. Anyone else with a question? Let me see if something is coming in. I think Enaga's left now, and she asked a question about counting 6/8 time. Does anyone want to know a little bit about counting 6/8 time? Let me just go through that, because some of you may know how to count and some of you may not know how to count, and then she's got it from when she comes back. So this was concerning this piece, Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and it comes from this book here, Cassia Harvey. Where is my camera? Oh my goodness me. There we are. Third position study book for the violin. Okay. Really, really nice book. And we were playing this piece in one of the courses, and it says 6/8 time. Now 6/8 time means there are 6 quaver beats in a bar. In America, you guys say there are 6 eighth notes in a bar. In a measure, should I say. So that means that we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those 6 beats are grouped into 2 groups of 3 counts. So you always have got 2 sections in this measure, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can you see how they're grouped together in groups of 3? So when you play the first line, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Every single bar. But now look down 2 lines. Here I can also see 2 groups. Can you see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the crotchet note or the quarter note has got the equivalent of 2 eighth notes, 2 quavers, and the dot means add half as much again. So that together adds up to 3. So this is 3 counts, and that is also 3 counts. Now here you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. Dotted crotchet rest, dotted quarter note rest. The rest is 1, 2, or in this case 4 or 5, because it's the second half of the bar, and then 1 eighth note, 1 quaver there. So I'm hoping that helps. And in the meantime, a question has come in from Terry. What about scale? I took piano lessons. Scale work was a must. Yeah, like I said, the scales are a different matter. This is still about ABRSM. The scales I find extremely valuable. So I use the scale books for almost everyone, although I would, and that is the discrepancy, I think that the pieces in the ABRSM syllabuses are too hard for the level that they're allocated to. Whereas the scales, I always let people play a scale book up from where they really are, because the scales are relatively easy for the violin, and I would say I would prefer my pupils to start learning double stop scales at an earlier stage than where ABRSM puts it. You see, you start getting octaves in grade 6, very, very tentatively they appear in the grade 6 book for the first time, and then a bit more in grade 7, and then all out in grade 8. I think that should be taught a lot earlier than grade 8, where it properly goes into octave practice, you see. But scales, I think, even for beginners, if you know a D major scale and you combine it with a piece that's also in the key of D major, you get a lot of overlap between the two. And it helps you remember, it helps you recognize scale passages in each piece of music, and also arpeggio patterns in the music. So the two then get connected, and it makes it easier to learn the scales when you know why you're learning the scales, because they're benefiting your pieces. And you also get it the other way around. It makes your pieces easier because you recognize scale patterns and arpeggio patterns, and you think, oh, I know this because I've practiced the scale and the arpeggio of this piece. But then you have to very cleverly combine the two. So I would try, I don't say it never ever happens, but you would have to very, very cleverly organize your pieces and combine it with the same scales. So if you play a piece in D major, you might eventually also play an octave scale in D major. You see, so I'm not asking someone to play a piece in D major and then have an E flat major scale, because there is no connection. It doesn't make sense. But so learning scales, I'm all in favor of, but examining scales is a whole different thing, because a lot of people find scales very, very difficult to play, and it's quite unfair on young people, I think, is to put them through so many different scales. I think at some point for grade 2 the requirement was for 22 different scale related things, and that is something that most young people just cannot get their heads around. It's too hard a mountain to climb, you see. So why would you ask them that? So at the moment, most of my pupils take performance grades because yes, they play an extra piece, but then they don't have to play the scale component. They learn the scale component, but it's not to be tested, and that's a whole different thing. So yeah, scales work were a must. I totally agree with that, and it helps fluency in your playing. It helps intonation. It helps bowing technique. There's so much to learn from scales, but examining scales is a whole different ballgame, isn't it? I hope that answers your question, and I hope it makes a point that there is so much to learn on the violin. The repertoire is so broad. I'd much rather prefer that people played a broad repertoire and then played their different pieces and recognized the correct style and be expressive in the music, rather than, for the sake of learning scales, learn 22 scales. Can you see my point? So I am a great advocate also of combining pieces that are in different styles, and my intermediate grade pupils, that they will at least play 2 different styles of music at the same time. So they might play a Baroque piece and then a jazzy piece, or they might play a romantic piece and a classical modern piece. So I've got somebody auditioning for a conservatoire, and they will play a Glazunov sonata and combine it with solo Bach. So you get 2 extremes of style, and if a person can play a piece in the correct style with the correct style characteristics, it is of valuable importance, and it really makes sense from a musical perspective. You see, if they can play the right pieces in the right style. So in that way, you also don't ever create robots, because within those styles, people are free to express themselves. So while you might say in Baroque pieces you emphasize every first beat of the bar, there is enough freedom for them to explore how you then build phrases, how you shape phrases. If your first beat of the bar is louder, what do you do with the rest of the notes in that bar? Do you play them crescendo or diminuendo? Do you then play to the next first beat of the next bar? It's that sort of questions that become very, very interesting. Now, a few more questions have come into the chat box. Thank you for writing. Joanita, Joanita, really nice to hear from you. I love violin, but I don't know anything on violin. Please, how can I also know how to play chords? Oh, that's a lovely question. Yes, I will tell you how to play chords. And I have no idea. You don't know anything about the violin, you say. I don't know whether you are a beginner or whether you are just a little bit cautious. Maybe you're a bit more advanced already. And when you start to play chords, and you've never played chords, start with this. So I'll talk you through. And one day I might make a video about playing chords. I'm trying to think because I have taught it once. I'm trying to remember. It may come to me which of my older videos on the channel will contain chords. But if you play let me start by saying, first of all, on the violin, you cannot really play more than 2 notes together. If you play more than 2 notes together, you're going to have to play notes after one another. Now, I'll show you in a moment what I mean by that. Or you're going to have to play very roughly. So if I play 2 notes, I play my A and E strings together. Can you hear that they sound perfectly at the same time? If I now want to add an open D string, that becomes a 3-part chord because I'm playing D, A and E. Now that with 3-part chords, we play 2 notes and then 2 notes, and the middle note overlaps between the bottom half of the chord and the top half of the chord. But I could play 3 notes together if my music was really, really loud. So I'll play you a different chord now. Can you hear? I play 3 notes together and I'm pressing the bow onto the string so hard that I'm pressing the strings flat like that, and they get played in one line. But I'd say a lot of pieces you want to be a bit more gentle, and you can't actually play those 3 notes unless you play very loudly. So if we in normal pieces play 3 notes, we'd go, see the bottom half of the chord, in my case it's the D and A strings, and then the top half of the chords is A and F sharp. That sounds like it is one chord because the bottom note still rings while I play the top half of the chord. With 4-part chords, this is much clearer. So now I'm going to play an open G, an open D, a B on the A string, first finger, and a G on the E string, second finger. So this is my chord, look. Now this chord, 4 notes, I can only play 2 by 2. I can't possibly play them all in one go. I can just about manage it if I'm super loud and super wild with my bow. I wouldn't say this is a very stylish way of playing a chord. You see, that is much more elegant because I get more sound from each individual note. So therefore, when you play chords, aim for playing 2 notes together and try to stay clear of playing 3 notes together, bar the odd moment in the whole of the literature where it's going to be wild, okay? Other than that, we only play 2 notes together. So when you're a beginner and you want to play some chords, then start very gently by playing 2 adjacent strings. So you might practice. When you play folk drone music. That could be a really nice drone at the bottom of a tune, okay? And you might even record that on your phone and then play a melody to it, and you can improvise. Or you might play... or you might just play open strings. You see, and you can gradually make it a bit more difficult by picking different finger combinations. There are some really lovely double stop books, and all of my pupils usually play Josephine Trott, and that is called something like Melodious Studies for Double Stops. So if you're into playing double stops and you're an upper intermediate player, I would say, then go for a Josephine Trott. And if you're a little bit more advanced, then I'm a great advocate of the Polo double stop studies. And Mr. Polo is an Italian composer, and he's written very lovely double stop tunes. And they then lead into the Bach solo sonatas, where you play very complicated double stop chords. I've forgotten it. You see, so that is partly double stops, partly even notes. So I'm hoping I've told you a little bit about what you had in mind when you were asking the question. You may know that I have written a book, and it's currently being edited, and it's coming out very, very shortly now. And there's a big chapter on double stop playing as well, and I'll let you know obviously when that book gets released, and you might try that because it is a really nice sort of introduction to playing double stops. I hope that answers your question, Joanita. Kathy says, happy to be here. Thank you for my great pleasure, Kathy. Any questions? Keep them coming. We've got about 8 minutes, so now is your time. So whilst the other questions may just be coming in, people sometimes ask me, what can you do to support the Pro Am Strings channel? I'm hoping to be going on with the channel for quite a while because I thoroughly enjoy it. And especially these things where I interact with you, the user of the channel, are for me the highlights of doing the channel. So that is beyond doubt. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so people sometimes ask me, how can I support the channel? And there are various different ways about how you can support the channel. The first way is to watch every video through to the end, because that shows YouTube that people are interested in this content, and the retention rate gets up. And when the retention rate of each video goes up, the video gets shown to a similar audience. So that is one thing. Watch each video to the end and try to interact with it. So either like it, share it, or write a comment. And you can sometimes hear me. I'm not a very great fan of in every video saying to people, please like and subscribe this video. If you write a comment below it, we have got more of a conversation going again, isn't it? So you guys sometimes respond to other people's comments. I sometimes respond to other people's comments as well. And that also is something that YouTube really likes. So what can you do to support the channel is do that sort of thing. Then of course you can like and subscribe to the channel. Subscribing to the channel makes a bit of a difference because it indicates that certain people like that sort of content, and I'm absolutely astonished that we're coming up to the 25,000 subscribers. I don't know how that's happened, but I'm absolutely delighted about that. And another way that you can support the channel is, of course, become a member of Henriette's Violin Club. There are different videos, slightly more advanced videos that are in the membership area of the channel. So people pay different amounts. Now I'm going to give you the amount in British pounds, but if you live somewhere else, the amounts are slightly different because they amount to about the same. The cheapest level, I think, is $4.99, and that is when you just generally support the channel and you get priority responses to comments. And then the next level up, I think, is $8.99, and you get more advanced videos than what there is on the channel. So if you've watched most of the content on the channel, you can carry on learning, and you have something a little bit more that's a little bit more challenging. And then there is the gold level, so you've got bronze, silver and gold at the top. Gold gives you access to everything below. I think it's $12.99, and it gives you access to even more advanced content, such as learning to play in the third position and tonalization. That was a very popular course as well, Suzuki tonalization. So if that is something that you're interested in, it is in the membership level. So that is something else that you can do. And recently I have opened a donations page for people, because people sometimes ask me, can I donate to the channel? And yes, you can now. If you look at my latest new releases, there is a PayPal button. So there you go, enough of a plug there. And Terry is saying, trying to learn to play O mio bambino caro shifting. Really good. Now, Terry, I'll let you in on a little secret, because I was talking about my new book earlier on, and that exact same song will be in the book, and it's all about shifting. So good on you. And isn't it a lovely, lovely piece? And that's why I wanted to put it in. And this book is called Do It Yourself Violin, and the brief was it'll be printed by Hallett Publications in America. The brief was, can you write violin songs and teach the violin using more popular things? So not the classical sort of idiom that you tend to get for violin players, but more popular stuff. And I've always wanted to do that, because I've got 3 children and 2 of them played the guitar and the saxophone, and they have all these wonderful pieces to play on the more modern instruments, and we get to play all the boring things on the violin, isn't it? So I was absolutely delighted and very much challenged to take up that offer. And there's lots of Sony, Motown, film tunes, all sorts of different tunes that you don't normally expect to see in a violin book. So something for you to bear in mind. That's something to come in the next couple of months. And then we have got Devlin. Hello, Devlin. Welcome to this chat here. I don't have any ideas about violins from where to buy them. Can you suggest something for me as a beginner? Range is €600. Yes, well, this is, if you go on my website, proamstrings.com, this is exactly the reason why I've opened the shop on my website. Because I found that people went on Amazon and they just bought any violin that came up the first, and usually they're sponsored links, so they're not by quality of instrument the way they're organized, but the more the seller pays, the more to the top they appear on the page. So really good instruments are the Stentor range and the Cremona range. I'm not saying there are other really good instruments, but please steer clear from the cheapest instruments, and especially the whole package ones where you get a violin and a bow and a case and rosin and a shoulder rest and spare strings and the whole shebang, because they are just too cheap. They're more like toys almost, and they're not suitable for playing on. And especially in the early days when you learn to play the instrument, the violin's difficult to learn, so you don't want to make it more difficult than you need to. So buy a good quality instrument, and your range, €600, seems a reasonable amount that you can spend on a violin. You might even go slightly less, go 500 or so, and you'll still find a really good instrument. But please don't play any cheap instruments, because you're not going to get any fun from it. It's very hard to make a nice sound, and you just generally get more pleasure from something that sounds a lot better. And the reason why some of these instruments are a bit more expensive is because they are made from more seasoned wood. It sounds crazy, but letting the wood season once it has been cut down, once the tree's been cut down, not in a kiln but just in nature, just in the woods, leaving it flat, it gets you a better quality instrument, because when the wood gets heated in a kiln to dry it, something happens to the cells of the wood, and it's much better to let them sort of come to rest and let them dry out naturally than too fast, because the cells shrink and they don't fit together anymore. And this is also why new violins sound quite harsh sometimes, and that's just because of the wood cells. When they vibrate, because you play the instrument, they tend to sort of shake in a sort of space. I'm indicating that with my fingers, and once they fall into a pattern so that they are connected, it gives you a nice overall even sound. But in the beginning, those wood cells are just sitting next to each other, vibrating, and they're not making any connection. And it's only after a lot more playing, sometimes it depends on how much you play, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, that the violin sound will start to come out much more. So whenever you buy a new instrument and it's not been played before, the advice is to play it as much as you can, simply to get the wood vibrating and to get the wood settling. So if your violin sounds really, really harsh when you first get it, most instruments do when they're brand new. I'm hoping that answers your question. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for being here, and I'm hoping you've enjoyed it. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. No, I'm only joking, but that is what you can do to help. So let's think, whilst I have you here, let's think about our next live class, because I very much like to have you guys involved to see when that might be. So it's the 27th of October. We'll have one more towards the end of November. Shall we say 24th of November? Live class, and we'll do the same time as we are here, 13:30. Bear in mind, if you're in America at the moment or somewhere else where you don't change your time, summertime, wintertime, then bear in mind that we go to Greenwich Mean Time this weekend, so we'll go back an hour. So what is now 1:30 in your time will then be 2:30. So just double check the time zones, because we will be changing times very, very soon. Okay, thanks very much for being here. You're an absolute awesome audience, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. Thanks. Bye.